This man is about to die. That was the headline on the cover of the New York Post yesterday. The story has gone viral. Why? Because the photograph underneath that chilling headline shows a man desperately trying to escape an oncoming subway train. The paper then says one word: doomed. That man did die. Dozens of people stood by and did nothing. Did this man have to die? What would you do if you were caught in a life or death crisis? Crushed like a rag doll. That is a direct quote from the photographer who took this chilling photo, published in the New York Post yesterday, showing what ended up being the final moments of Ki-Suk Han's life. Mr. Han was 58 years old, the husband and father who died after being pushed onto the railroad tracks. The photo itself has sparked outrage and debate. Joining me, Steve Kardian. Steve, you understand this stuff very deeply. You actually saved an 8-year-old when you were 16. That was your first experience with this. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, it was, Dr. Doohan. I just want to quickly thank you and Anderson Cooper for that information. It was right on, expertly done. When I was a young kid of 16, I was on a beach with my girlfriend, now wife, and I saw a lady jump up, and she ran over to a pile of sand. I ran over, and there was an 8-year-old boy that had piled the sand up and dug down in. It collapsed on him for a lengthy period of time. I went about digging as fast as I could. It took me a while to reach him. I lifted him up. He wasn't breathing. He was purple. His eyes were rolled back in his head, and he was completely limp. And at that time, there were 20 adults standing around me that live and vacation at that beach. And I held him up, and I repeatedly said, please, does anyone know CPR? Does anyone know CPR? Not a single person spoke to me. I laid him down. I had read about doing CPR, so I did rescue breathing. A little bit later, he began, about a minute or so later, he began breathing, and I was left with the question, why was that task delegated to a 16-year-old kid?
What do you think now as an adult? You're now somebody that works in the helping professions. What is this about us?
Well, Dr. Drew, there's a saying in law enforcement that we have is that exposure to danger makes a brave person braver. And that's a law enforcement thing. The average person is not exposed to that daily event, what we saw in that subway. They become panicked. They don't know what to do. Unless there's a leader in the group that dictates and takes command and runs over and leads them into that rescue, it's likely not to happen. So, Steve, how do we create leaders out of this? How do we not freeze out of fear? How do we prepare ourselves? Do you have any advice? Yes. What do we see ourselves today do? We're on our cell phone. We're texting. We're reading a book. When we get on the subway, we look down at people's feet. The only people that are looking straight ahead are law enforcement, fire, and EMS. So prepare yourself every day for anything that could go possibly wrong in your life. Come up with a blueprint. It's a plan of action to go to so that you have something to draw upon in a time of extreme emotional stress.
Yeah, it's about being conscious, being aware, thinking about things, having presence of mind, not thinking it can't happen to me. I say that all the time in this show. Thinking it could happen to me, and how do I prepare for it? Now, Steve, let me go back to you. Do you think that's too aggressive, or are we going to end up with more victims as a result of people developing a vigilante attitude? In fact, in the control room, if you have the video of the guy fighting with the gentleman, I think there's a video out there, I think we have it, who eventually pushed him onto the tracks. If you could play that behind Steve's response here, there it is now. That's the guy that eventually pushes him onto the tracks. Was that a mistake to confront this guy who was, Steve, harassing other people in the subway station?
Especially if the reports are true that he had been drinking, it's at no time during that scenario that he should have approached him. If you are intoxicated, stay away. We have plenty of things we could do. Thank you, Kate, for your service. Everybody should read his book. But the people that actually respond to something like this are our true heroes, and they're far and few between.
Wait, Steve, hang on, Steve, hold on. I want to be able to respond. Am I wrong? Am I going to just be a guy laying on the tracks bloodied too, or am I wrong to think that way?
Dr. Drew, if I could cut in here real quick.
Just as
Steve first, then Kate. Steve, please.
Okay.
Yes, people need to be told that they could do that, or a leader has to step up to undertake that, because the general person, the 9-to-5er, is not going to do that by himself. Our heroes will, but not the 9-to-5er in general.
I think there's a bigger question here that every viewer needs to ask themselves. In a day when people represent their lives, their experience, as Anders was talking about earlier in the show, by virtue of what happens on Facebook, would you have taken that picture? If you were frozen there and saw $1 million picture you could take, would you take it? I want to hope that, Debbie, you're right, that people would feel outraged about it. Do either of you have an opinion about the guy taking the picture?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to take him and beat him with his camera personally.
Okay, Steve, well, don't do that, Kate. Steve, your point?
It tells a lot about his inner core, Dr. Drew. No, that was a cowardly act, and it can't be condoned.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Of course, Anderson Cooper from earlier, Cade Courtley, Steve Kardian.